Welcome to this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio, the weekly radio news magazine that we put together here at the Virginia Institute for Public Policy. My name is Joe Thomas, and you can learn more about us at tertiumquids.org, and you can find archived footage, if you wish to call it that, of this program, archived editions on our YouTube channel. Go to YouTube and then search Freedom and Prosperity Radio, and there they all are. I should tell you in advance, though, there are no video images, so you won't see what it looks like to do the program, and that would probably be crestfallingly disappointing. But the audio is awesome, and we put all of our efforts into that for you this morning. Our first guest this week is Rebecca Friedrichs, who is founder of For Kids and Country, just an absolutely tour de force editorial about teachers' unions and the impeachment process. First and foremost, Rebecca, welcome to Freedom and Prosperity Radio. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. It's really nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, and thank you for all you do for what is, honestly, I'm amazed sometimes how many people need to be reminded that when you have kids, they immediately supplant you at the center of the universe. I was gifted with no great insight, but as soon as my first child was born, I knew I had stepped aside, and they were now the center of my universe.
That's for sure.
It's well, and now they're okay, and now I can go back to being the center of my universe because they're grown now. So Rebecca, the first jump in here is, why do the teachers' unions even have a say? I mean, I know that they have never been happy with the Trump administration from the moment Betsy DeVos took over the Department of Education. But in an impeachment inquiry that doesn't involve anything regarding education, why do the teachers even feel like they need to have a say?
Yeah, I'm really glad you started with this question, because this has nothing to do with teachers. It's not teachers who are pushing for the impeachment of a sitting president. It's the unions that are pushing for it, and they use teachers to do their bidding. So the first thing your listeners need to know is that pretty much everything these teachers' unions say is opposite of what we would think it would mean. In other words, they present themselves as one thing, but they're really something else. So when they call themselves teachers' unions, they are not that at all. They are actually a very radical, angry political action committee of a very far left agenda in this country, and they are using teachers to gain unfettered access to America's kids. And they put us out in the front as if this is what teachers want. This is, this is coming from the hearts of teachers. And that's a lie. As a 28-year California public school teacher, I can tell you that teachers like myself are bullied continually by these unions. So they are a very highly political organization running a leftist agenda off the backs of teachers. So they're 100% out of their actual jurisdiction.
Well, let's follow that, because we see this, and unfortunately then it plays out on the local level when our school boards and our supervisors here in Virginia are hit up by our school boards, and they'll get a room full of parents with matching T-shirts distributed by the teachers saying, please give us more money or our favorite teachers are all going to get fired. And so yet again the teachers get used along with the students and the parents as pawns in a power struggle that really has very little to do with raising well-educated, well-balanced children.
That's exactly it. You've nailed it. So think about it. If you wanted to subvert a free country or subvert the family structure, what would you do? You would use little children to push your agenda, or you would use the most trusted figures in our society, teachers, parents, to push your agenda. So the unions have come in, and what they've actually done is divide us all. You just talked about the unions using teachers and kids and parents to upset a school district. Well, what the unions did in the 60s and 70s was they bullied the state and national PTAs into a stance of neutrality. I have a whole chapter about this in my book, showing the details of how the PTA is no longer run by parents. They think it is, that parents at the local level are working really hard, but all the money they send up and everything that's happening at the upper levels is all controlled by the teachers' unions. Parents are no longer permitted to take a stance against a stance of the unions. That's why you see parents coming in picketing against their own best interests, against their children's best interests, because they've been deceived and bullied and manipulated by these unions.
I usually get in trouble around county budget time by referring to the process as just slightly akin to a bank robbery, where they say, we have your children, we're holding them for ransom, and make the check payable too. And it works. I mean, that's why they do it. It works because we love our children. We want them to have our best. But I guess we have somehow been fooled into thinking that what the school says is best for our kids is actually best for our kids. Go figure.
Yeah, we all really need to push back because, our American founders set up an educational system that was best for our kids, run by local communities, not run by the government, and we had a highly incredible classical liberal arts education, including Judeo-Christian virtues, all kinds of wonderful things that made children moral people and well-educated people. Well, the unions have come in and subverted all of that. And so what happened was Americans didn't realize what was going on. And so now that it's gotten so obvious, our children are being sexualized in the classroom. Our discipline is out of control. All of that is the fault of these unions. So, in my opinion, it's time for parents and teachers, good people, to rise up. If they need to pull their kids out, pull them out. And teachers need to reject these unions en masse, and that's my goal. I've actually resigned my classroom, miss my students so much it hurts.
Hello, Rebecca? I think we lost you there for a moment. You said you were just telling us how you missed your children so much.
Yeah, I said I miss my students so much, but someone had to stand up and fight against this subversion of our wonderful schools and the abuse of teachers and kids.
We're visiting with Rebecca Friedrichs, founder of 4 Kids and Country. You see her on Fox News, contributor there. Great column about this very issue, the teachers' unions and their stance on the impeachment inquiry, and even their misunderstanding of exactly what's going on, because they've just bought into the idea of if we say impeachment enough, people will just believe, well, I guess he deserves it. Rebecca, let me ask you, you brought up the subject of teachers standing up and stepping out against this. It seems like over the last 50 years, the federal government, in many different instances, and I would say we'd take a big swing towards balancing our budget if we stop this federal idea of buying our way around our prohibition. So, for example, in our case, the federal government has no role in the schools. But if Johnny Government shows up with a bag full of taxpayer money from Washington, D.C. and says, here, we'll give you this if you... Here's that phrase, quid pro quo, you hear so much in the news these days. If you teach this way, is that what the teachers' unions are afraid of, that eventually President Trump and Betsy DeVos and the Department of Education will stop the gravy train and they'll actually have to go back to being responsible to the parents who from where I sit, are getting the message that their kids are failing at being good citizens. They're failing at the math and English tests more and more here in Virginia and across the area. They're not good citizens. They're throwing rocks at each other. They're burning people's cars, and we're coming unhinged. And I think I think it has to eventually get back to our communities. Is that what the unions are afraid of? Is that the president will eventually pull the plug?
Well, all of those things you mentioned, every one of them, the rocks, the chaos, the kids failing at school, all of it, 100% of it is the fault of those unions who are masquerading as teachers. Before President Trump was even elected, these unions were ready to impeach him. Just like, Justice Kavanaugh was harassed from the start, the teachers' unions were behind that too. So what they're trying to do is remove all conservative thought or all thought that's different than the union's very far leftist agenda. Just remove it all.
Well, do you find that parents are catching on, though, that 50 years of these growing powerful teachers unions and educational cabals, and our kids are getting dumber?
Well, they are. I mean, the kids aren't dumber. The kids are bright. They're just not being educated.
Right.
Here's the scary thing. Yes, parents are catching on, but the unions are so deceitful. What they've done is they have come in and they have divided and conquered. They haven't conquered yet, but almost. Most parents, if they haven't talked to me or someone like me, blame teachers for all these problems. The unions walk away, with their pockets full of cash and all this power, really trying to destroy our free republic. And so then we're all fighting each other, and parents are fighting the school boards, and teachers are fighting the administration. Everyone's fighting. But the real problem, the wizard behind the curtain pulling all the puppet strings, is these unions, these government unions. So my hope is, and the reason I left the classroom to get out and get this message out as often as I possibly can, is to help Americans to see we are being undermined from within, and it's government unions. We shouldn't be fighting each other. We need to dig out this root cause, this root problem, government unions. They never should have been given the ability to unionize in the public sector. That is a conflict of interest. And they aren't unions anyway. They're really a political action committee for a very frightening agenda. So hopefully parents and teachers will start to wake up to see the truth. Right now there's a lot of confusion still.
Oh, absolutely. And when even FDR, who is, the Buddha figure at the center of many progressive programs, says no government unions. Even if he saw it, I guess even he can be ignored. Maybe like Jefferson, they'll forget FDR and the Democratic Party brand eventually. Yeah.
Well, when you are blindly pushing an agenda, you pay attention to those things you want to pay attention to, and you ignore everything else. These teachers' unions they're even the ones undermining science. They've rewritten the scientific method. They're undermining I don't care what you list, they're part of. If it's divisive, if it's harmful, they're behind Black Lives Matter. They're behind those women in the pink hats protesting for abortion rights. They're behind it all. They're 100% out of their jurisdiction. So, FDR was a prophet. He knew this would be dangerous, and it is. And so we really need to stop it.
Rebecca Friedrichs is the founder of 4 Kids and Country, contributor at Fox News as well, a great column about the teachers' unions, and actually really a clarion call to the teachers to realize what's going on. Rebecca, I want to spend some time talking about what could come next. I've been bugged by this idea because I watch folks like our Senator Mark Warner spend time and time again when he's not chasing the president and impeachment. He's talking about clamping down on the, quote, gig economy, the Ubers, the Lyfts, the Airbnbs. But I think about the previous 10 years where one of the growing things was homeschooling. We read reports from Ivy League schools like Harvard and Yale that some of the top students coming into these schools, the growing population, were homeschool kids who are coming in better prepared to win seats at these Ivy League institutions than even private school kids were able to do. So let me ask you this: can we apply the gig economy concept to homeschooling and really come up with almost a conflagration of something new where parents and teachers who have realized that their calling to bring education to young people can still be met without the traditional brick and mortar center of an elementary school?
Yeah, that would be my dream. And that's how our country was originally founded. Schools were just, they were within the community. And you had parents and teachers working together to bring a great education to these kids, sometimes in a one-room schoolhouse. And that is definitely the answer. The government has zero reason to be in our schools. The government in our schools is dangerous for the very reason you just said. They set up, you have to teach this, 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 and this to get the money, and it all becomes about money. Common Core, the reason schools brought in Common Core, it was attached to money. The reason schools have brought in these dangerous racial equity discipline policies where we can't suspend kids and the classrooms have become war zones, it's attached to money. So we need to unattach. It doesn't cost this big money to educate Americans' kids. We could do it for a whole lot less in a model like you described, but we better do it fast. Because if we look to Europe and see some of the things that are going on across the globe, there have been countries that have now outlawed homeschooling and outlawed private schools. That's what's coming. The teachers' unions want, and let's get it right, they're not really teachers, but these unions masquerading as teachers, what they want is for every single child to be in a government-run public school. They want that government to be a radical leftist socialist agenda, and they want all children and teachers indoctrinated in that. That's dangerous. And so we need to act fast so that we can get our schools and our country back.
Well, what about the teacher themselves? As your letter in Fox News, your editorial, you're speaking to the teacher as you were a teacher in California and you escaped. It's almost like you're the unicorn. But the teachers, they get the short end of the stick. Each kid, if you divide up the school budgets by the number of students, anywhere between $8,000 to $15,000 per student per year is expended by the school divisions. Yet the teachers struggle to make ends meet. They're entry level. They're paid barely subsistence, often not even being able to afford to live in the communities. And then these unions come in and say, well, if you do these things for us, then we'll do these things for you. Hey, there's that quid pro quo again, and start to hook these teachers into the ideology of this is how you get ahead. You get ahead by getting out of the classroom. So every year there's, the best teachers become poor administrators, but they're getting more money and they're getting, better salaries because they get out of the classroom. We seem to have put the operation of the industry of education on its head as well. That's where I wonder if the teachers realize what's going on to them to a great enough number to mount an insurgency, or if they've just been convinced that the only way to get along is to go along.
Yeah, sadly, what you just said, most teachers go along to get along. If you think about the personality of most teachers, we are people who adore children, who want to protect, and most teachers really are very dedicated to delivering instruction and loving on these little students. So what do the unions do? They bring in all this chaos So now teachers are in this chaotic environment just trying to survive. If we could wake up teachers to see that the union is behind all of the chaos, all of the crisis, all of the problems, the pay that you mentioned, teachers have come up with these steps and columns where the only way you can make more money is with years of service and university credits. So you have amazing teachers making very low salaries and some horrible teachers who are making, $125,000 just because they've been around for a while, but they're abusive to the kids and whatever. So teachers have no idea that the unions are behind all of these problems because the unions have so deceived and manipulated them into thinking it's everybody else's fault. And teachers don't realize that their unions are funding all of the crooked and corrupt legislators and school board members who are creating these problems. So my answer to the problem is something called Adopt a Teacher. Mm-hmm. And if people go to our website for kidsandcountry.org, all they have to do is click on the menu item Adopt a Teacher. It's a 3-minute read on how to love on a teacher, educate that teacher. Just hand them a copy of my book because my book is dozens of testimonies of real teachers who were brave enough to let me tell their stories, and we expose the unions for all the hurtful things they're doing to kids and our country and our classrooms and to educators, and I address every single deceit the unions have used to keep teachers trapped. So if people will use our Adopt a Teacher program, they can actually empower teachers to stand together. If teachers would stand together, with a 51% vote in their district, they can decertify these unions. But teachers won't do that today because they don't understand enough to do it, and they like their local associations. So I address all those things that teachers want, all the things they're afraid of, all the things that the average person wouldn't know to say to a teacher. They're all addressed there in that book, and that's the whole reason I wrote it. So we hope people will adopt teachers.
Well, it sounds like an absolutely perfect plan. So they should go to your website, and again, it is forkidsandcountry.org and Adopt a Teacher. Rebecca, thank you so much for being on this week's edition of Freedom and Prosperity Radio. It's been a great meeting you, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon. But hopefully we can pull this out of a nosedive before it hits the side of a mountain.
Amen. And call on me anytime. Nice being here.
Rebecca Friedrichs, she is the founder of For Kids and Country. Coming up next, president and co-founder of the Center for Medicine in the Public Interest, Common Sense Healthcare, Peter Pitts, next on Freedom and Prosperity Radio.